bust out in some big song. You realize I'm a really famous rock and roll star that's on, you know. I'm Sherry, I'm an addict, I'm sorry. Forget where I am sometimes. I would like to thank the committee for inviting me, except I got drafted, I think, Monday to fill in. I appreciate that. My brother-in-law, Vicente, was the good news bearer. He volunteered me. And I appreciate that, except now he's not here. So it was kind of, I wanted to like grieve and not be here, except it's quite an honor, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my brief experience, strength, and hope in the first years of Narcotics Anonymous after I got here. And I actually got here in 1974, but there was a little experimentation I had to check out. You know, I didn't really want to stop drinking. I liked my old English 800. I had finally found something to work fast, cheaply, and I had it for breakfast. If I had any money, if I was really flush, I had a bag of M&Ms and some milk, you know, for my protein and to get going. Anyway, so my first meetings that I went to were through a recovery house. Recovery houses were really big in the San Jose Peninsula area, brought a lot of people into the program. Everyone that I ever met really was from one of the programs. And I can thank Beth Bottomley, who was an early person, helped start a lot of houses, programs. And she started the one that I first got introduced to the program in 1974. I took my last one September 12th, 1975, because I just, you know, the rules just didn't apply to me. I'm so sorry, but, you know, I was even in a recovery house, and, you know, that particular 48-hour pass was not going to apply to me. No rules, you know. I deserved it. I was a good person underneath it all. And so the early meetings in this area, we didn't have a whole lot of meetings. Oh, by the way, before I get too far into this, I would like to thank Tommy H. of Paradise and Lynn M. of Weaverville for ruining my using. They told me the story about Narcotics Anonymous. We were all of us using at the time, but they had been here already, and they explained. I said, what is that? You know, God. Who says the word narcotics? You know, I'm not an addict. No. And they said, it's where you go if you have a case. And since I was far, far superior from all you people going to jail, I figured this was never going to apply to me. I'm not going to have to sit in those stupid-ass rooms and, you know, be good. Anyway, so started going to meetings shortly after that as my life spun out of control pretty badly. I heard a lot of people in my family in particular. I lost a sister 8 years ago, and I had a brother that held on to the resentment from my using days, which was like 32 years at the time since I'd taken one. He still hated me and the creepy guys I brought around, and he let me have it. He said, you have nothing coming, and you know, anyway, so that's a sick family that needs help. The early meetings that we went to stay clean were Narcotics Anonymous meetings in San Francisco, the Friday night Grace Cathedral meeting atop Nob Hill. Oh, it was so cool. These are like, you know, they had like these throne like seats and everything, and you signed in this big dramatic book, and there was a lot of people from San Francisco who were very diverse already, you know, and I enjoyed that. That's where I came from, was a diverse background. I didn't really hang too much in San Jose where the hayseeds all were. That's how I saw it. It was all mostly country and fruit trees and that kind of thing, you know, country, real country people. And this is what I thought at the time. I was very superior, you understand. And so the Tuesday night meeting in Berkeley, where Sylvia M. and her brother Richard came up from San Pedro, actually, and started NA meetings in Berkeley. I think they'd been contacted by some outside agency to start up an actual program in a storefront, I think on University Avenue, actually, and they quickly saw within 6 months that there wasn't any funding and nobody really gave a shit. And so they knew about NA. They were already clean lots of years, and they started NA meetings, and that Tuesday night meeting is still going strong. We had the Thursday night pit meeting in San Jose, which was in the basement of a church, And that was, was a wild-ass meeting, boy. I think the first speaker I heard there was, Snoopy was the secretary, and KDW was the first speaker, and from Oakland originally. And she had a lot to say. She was like a budding Roseanne, really. She had lots of opinions, and she knew how to express it, where you might want to get up and punch her, but you just can't, you know. I don't think they do that in meetings, you know what I mean? She was just so sure of herself. Let's see. There was a meeting in Los Gatos. I heard about the Los Gatos meeting from Tommy and Johnny when I was first 12-step by Lynn, and Tommy and Johnny, rest in peace, Johnny. You know, once again, the meeting where you go to if you have a case and you want to beat it. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, they were loaded, so I didn't quite get the connect. Sorry, man. You know, they were loaded. And as was Lynn. And so I thought, well, that's no sweat. You can be loaded and still go to meetings. That's cool. And a lot of us did. I'm so glad that none of you real big burly guys were around to throw us out, because in 1975 even, an NA had been around a while in the country, and we couldn't stay clean easily. I was only 25 years old. Who gets clean at 25, you know? Never mind that I just drank alcoholically from the early days, and that I couldn't say no to drugs after I had lost the ability to control my using, clearly. People were dying around me, violent deaths and stuff, big mysteries going on east of the 101, and I was terrified. I knew, might have looked as happy and grinning, but I knew there was something really wrong. And the worst part was if I got arrested and I made it in that San Mateo paper, my last name, my maiden name, was this big, long Polish name. My dad was kind of a wheel in San Mateo County after he got out of the military. And so I knew it was like I would have a curse on me. I couldn't walk freely in the streets of, you know, the peninsula, because here she is, you know, the girl with the Polish name, you know, and her dad's a big shot, that kind of thing. So believe it or not, that is really one of the motivators that got me clean. NA evolved, and you know, you could really just walk up and start something if you wanted, and just like Roseanne said, we got the message loud and clear: service. So even if I think I'm superior, or if I think this thing isn't going to work for me because I don't have a case, or I'm too white, or I'm too young, you know, all those reasons, it could still work for me if I, you know, did start something. And so we did. I helped start the Wednesday women's meeting at 8 o'clock. It was Monday nights. And my then husband was a secretary of a meeting at the Alano Club that night, same time, and I thought, well, this is where I can go, because he was a crazy man. I thought, this is where I can go, and the women can come, and I can continue to get better. And I worked at a women's program, and I thought, and they'll come and support the meeting if nobody else, right? Oh no, my ex-husband was very good looking, and they all wanted to go to his meeting. And so on my first sobriety birthday, I guess it was, maybe my second, it was my second sobriety birthday, when I'm going to the meeting and I'm all excited because, you know, everybody's all the women that I'm close to will be there. They weren't there. They went to the other guy's meeting at the Alano Club. And that was one of the first disappointments and hurts and fears that I wasn't being accepted, a lot of deep stuff that I had not been in touch with yet. You know, it was easy for me to not feel anything. Actually, I appreciated that. I even belong to a support group now outside of Narcotics Anonymous, and I enjoy the fact that I don't feel a lot. I'm cool with that. I mean, it's good to get in touch with your anger and, you know, blah, 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 like we all do over the years. But at the same time, I like to shut down. You know, the world is just too much for me sometimes. I believe that I've been restored to sanity through the process of the steps. And a lot of women helped me. I was fired by my sponsor about 2 years clean. The man I was married to was scaring the shit out of everybody, stalking me. There wasn't the word stalking yet. It wasn't a felony in the state of California. So they said they couldn't work with me anymore because, you know, I couldn't seem to get away from the guy, short of killing him, and that wasn't mentioned in the big book that we were using at the time, along with the little white pamphlet. By the way, one of the things I did do by running away from this guy, Mary Hedberg worked up here, and she was directing Pathway, but years before she had gotten sober. No, she never could get clean down in LA. That was the deal. She was in many NA meetings, but she could not or would not stay clean until she got a couple of years under her belt, and she ran up here away from a crazy maniac. Anyway, so down to LA I go. I'm going to a lot of NA meetings in North Hollywood, Jimmy Kinnon, I knew the sainted Jimmy Kinnon. And in fact, he was a really good letter writer. The old folks grew up writing letters. To write an inventory was not really a big thing unless you couldn't read, and a whole bunch of us couldn't read or write very well either. I'm amazed at the money going on around here, because when we were new, a lot of us were on welfare, because you could get on welfare pretty easy in California 40 years ago, and so we were, and the food stamps would go into the basket, All they could buy would be like, coffee or, whatever you needed for the meeting, but that's how poor most of us were for a long time. We didn't learn how to manage our money. There weren't any successes that owned their own businesses and stuff like that. We didn't bother paying our taxes. I mean, we kept racking up the wreckage in recovery because there wasn't any old timers that were coming around. They were either too old that they couldn't walk, that kind of thing, or blind, or their stories, they were ex-convicts, and so their stories were really lockjaw, and they were kind of stiff, and, in the early days when I was getting clean, the convict was the thing. And these people, mostly men, would hook up with these young chicks, such as myself, and think, I'm with a star from NA, we're going to be wonderful. And without working any program yet, And a lot of lives suffered as a result of our decision-making process in the early days without a lot of people with time. And I do believe I'm just about done. I actively went to NA until the process of writing the book. I myself and Dora and Sophia, who were people in the fellowship in San Jose, started working on the 8th step. And we knew some asshole in the Midwest was coming up with this stuff, and we thought, why are they doing this? Why? And so we gave an effort. We thought, we can't complain unless we contribute, and then we can complain. And so we tried, but I'm not sure how it turned out, because shortly after, I got pretty thin-skinned and I kind of bailed. I'm too crazy. I cannot, like Roseanne can sit through stuff and contention. I can sit through contention as I rise up out of my chair, I worked for a federal agency for about 25 years in recovery, and I could not sit in the staff meetings, and eventually I ended up, doing a postal I did a postal thing and jumped up out of my seat, yelling at the manager, who was a big deal, and I just couldn't stand another minute of this crap, That's just how it goes, and I was clean and sober, a long, long time. I've been retired now, and so I actually, to tell you the truth, I've just been watching the people drop off. A lot of us older people are meeting our demise with Hep C, AIDS, and all of the other cancer, lots of cancer. And my family, we lost 3 family members in 6 months. It was very, very difficult. And I just put one foot in front of the other, kept going to meetings and not taking anything, no matter what. And I have to, before I end, I'd like to mention the Magdaleno family. There's one still living, Richard, and I guess he was supposed to talk yesterday, but I've been in communication with him for a few days. He didn't know it was yesterday. He didn't think he was going to speak. I mean, he really didn't get it. So please have patience and compassion for the older members, especially if they're going through life as life shows up. It can be very difficult for them. And I'm pleading his case. Yeah, I'm pleading his case. He's a nice man. And Sylvia was his sister. And they called her the Hawaiian. She had been hit by a car when she was young, and she was like about 6.5 feet tall. And she was a big help to us women in Northern California. She started the Berkeley meeting, as I said. she passed a couple years ago after 50 years of recovery. And then there was Ron, was a friend of mine. He was a mailman, and that's how I knew him, in Sausalito. And then there was George and Hank. I believe that's all of them. And they were in Los Angeles throwing their weight around. So, in fact, Hank kind of introduced the entourage, going to the conventions with, your 20 babies behind you. We didn't call them sponsees at the time. They were babies. They were newcomers. Anyway, and so that was what I got to see, getting clean. I appreciate all that. See, I'm not so sure that what we actually say, like if I'm an addict, alcoholic, or if I'm an alcoholic addict, or if I'm an addict, or if I'm a junkie, or if I'm a PCP user, I get clean because I was ready to get clean. And you could have called me a dirty, rotten whore to my face, which happened a lot. That's the kind of people I like to marry. And I stayed clean. Miraculously, I stayed clean. So I just want to pass that along, that if you're confused, you're confused. That's right. You're confused. We're confused when we first get here, and sometimes for a long time after. We just don't take anything one day at a time and talk to people, and maybe you can stay clean too. Thank you.